My parents dragged me to court so my entitled sister could finally become a homeowner, even if it meant throwing me and my daughter out. I was ready to accept the judge's ruling just to end the pain, until my daughter stood up, held out her tablet, and said, "Can I show you what Grandma forced me to delete?" The judge nodded. She pressed play. What happened next made my parents turn pale. They say blood is thicker than water, but for me, it was a tsunami of betrayal that nearly drowned everything I held dear. Imagine your own parents, the ones who tucked you in at night, looking you dead in the eye and trying to kick your little girl onto the street. That's where my story begins. I'm telling you, if you had told me 5 years ago that this would be my life, sitting in a stiff wooden courtroom, watching my family smirk as a judge decides our fate, I would have laughed in your face. My hands are shaking right now just thinking about it. My lawyer is whispering, but I can't hear a word over the pounding in my chest. My parents are 2 rows back, wearing these smug expressions, and my sister, God help me, she's practically preening like she's already picked out the curtains for my house. But let me back up a bit, because this nightmare didn't start with a lawsuit. It started with a favor I should have known better than to give. My name's Jason, I'm 34, and I'm a single dad to an incredible 9-year-old girl named Mia. If there's one thing you need to know about me, it's that I don't play games when it comes to my kid. I never thought I'd be a father at 25, but life, you know? Her mom left when Mia was 2, and from that moment on, it was just the 2 of us. I work in IT. Nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills. After years of grinding, saving every penny, I finally bought a small house just outside the city. 3 bedrooms, a fenced yard, a good school district. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. Safe, quiet, the kind of place where you could finally breathe. My parents, I thought, were proud of me. My dad used to brag to his friends, "My boy's doing it on his own, can you believe that?" My mom would post blurry Facebook photos of Mia in our backyard, calling her little angel in her castle. It felt good, like I was doing everything right. But then Melissa came back. Melissa is my younger sister. She's 31, chronically unemployed, and somehow, always on the cusp of her next big thing. Whether it was a candle business, a gluten-free cookbook, or a Twitch stream teaching tarot to people's cats, Melissa was always one idea away from stardom. And every time she crashed and burned, which was often, my parents would swoop in like clockwork. Rent covered, credit card debt forgiven, broken lease? Sweetheart, you just need a fresh start. It was always the same story. Melissa was finding herself, and anyone who didn't support her journey was just jealous or toxic. When she moved back in with my parents after her 3rd spiritual burnout in 4 years, I just rolled my eyes and stayed quiet. I figured she'd crash for a few months, lick her wounds, and move on. But she didn't. She settled in like a barnacle, redecorating their guest room like it was some luxury Airbnb. She even had the nerve to call it her healing suite. I just bit my tongue. Then came the first hint of trouble. My mom called me one evening while I was making dinner. Mia was setting the table, humming a pop song. Chicken was sizzling in the pan. Everything felt normal until I picked up the phone. "Jason," Mom said, her voice sickly sweet. "Can you come over this weekend? We want to talk." I knew that tone. That was the "we've already made a decision, but we're pretending it's a discussion" tone. I asked what it was about, and she just laughed it off. "Nothing bad, sweetheart. Just something important." So I showed up that Saturday with Mia in tow. She ran off to play in the backyard with their golden retriever while I sat down with Mom, Dad, and Melissa, who was draped in some flowy cardigan, sipping kombucha like she was on a talk show. "We've been talking," Mom began, folding her hands like a news anchor. "And we think it's time Melissa got her own place." I raised an eyebrow. "Okay, great. Congrats." "She's ready," Dad added. "Really ready this time. She just needs a chance." Melissa chimed in, smiling wide. "I've been manifesting it. I just need the right energy space." I stared at them, trying to figure out where this was going. "So, you need help moving her?" Mom shook her head. "No, honey. We think you should give her your house." For a second, I genuinely thought she meant temporarily, like a few weeks or maybe a month while Melissa figured things out. So, I asked cautiously, "You mean let her stay with us?" "No," Melissa said, leaning forward like she was offering me a hot stock tip. "We mean sign the house over. Transfer the deed. You can move into a rental or something, just until you get back on your feet." I laughed. I actually laughed out loud, thinking it was some kind of sick joke. But no one else was laughing. "You're serious?" I said slowly. "She deserves this," Mom said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "She's never had stability. You've had your chance." "She's not even working," I snapped. "She's not paying for it. And what about Mia? You want to take away her home?" Melissa waved her hand dismissively. "She can come visit whenever." The rage that burned in my chest in that moment is hard to describe. It wasn't just about the house. It was about the gall, the entitlement, the fact that they were sitting there calmly suggesting I uproot my life and my daughter's life so my sister could finally feel like an adult. I stood up. "Absolutely not. Not happening." "You're being selfish," Mom said sharply. "She needs this," Dad added. "No," I said again, louder this time. "Mia and I live there. I paid for that house. You want to help her? Use your savings. Co-sign a lease. But don't come to me with this garbage." I grabbed Mia, told her we were leaving, and walked out without another word. I thought that was the end of it. I really did. Just another bizarre family moment to laugh about later. But oh no, it was just the beginning. Because 2 weeks later I got a letter. Certified mail. That thick, legal-looking envelope. Inside was a petition. My parents were suing me. And the reason? Unlawful possession of family property. Apparently, they had decided, without a shred of legal basis, that the house was part of some vague family trust and that Melissa was entitled to it as her inheritance. They wanted the court to force me to transfer ownership, evict myself, and leave the keys behind. I almost threw up. And as if that wasn't enough, they served it on Mia's birthday. That was the moment I realized something inside them had changed. Or maybe it had always been like this, and I just refused to see it. The golden child syndrome. The blind support. The way I'd always been the backup plan, the one expected to carry the weight while Melissa got praise for breathing. The court date was set. My lawyer, God bless him, was furious on my behalf. He said we had a strong case, that it was nonsense, but that didn't make it easier to stomach. I didn't tell Mia everything, just that there was some drama with Grandma and Grandpa, and that we might have to talk to a judge soon. She's smart though. Too smart. She started having nightmares, started asking if we'd have to live in a car. That wrecked me. But it wasn't until a week before the hearing that she came to me with her tablet clutched to her chest. "Daddy," she whispered, "I think I did something bad." I blinked. "What do you mean?" She looked up at me with big, nervous eyes. "Grandma made me delete something, but I saved it." I took the tablet from her. What I saw made my blood run cold. And that was the moment everything changed. I didn't even know a child's tablet could carry so much weight. When Mia handed it to me that night, her little hands were trembling. She looked like she expected me to be mad, but I wasn't. I was afraid. Afraid of what would make a child think she did something bad by saving something. I sat down on the edge of her bed, still dressed in my work clothes, the stress of the day already pounding behind my eyes. She crawled next to me, curling into my side, hugging her stuffed elephant. I opened the gallery first. Nothing. Then I checked the recently deleted folder. There it was, a video. It was shaky, filmed at a weird angle, like Mia had hidden the tablet between 2 couch cushions and angled it just enough to catch what was happening in my parents' living room. The audio was tinny, the picture slightly blurred, but you could clearly hear the voices. "He'll crack," my mom was saying. "He always caves when you push hard enough. He just wants peace." My dad replied, "We raised him to be too responsible. He'll think of the kid and fold." Then Melissa's voice, smug and cold. "If he doesn't, we sue. Public court. Shame him a little. He doesn't have the guts to fight. I'll play the victim, and he'll hand it over to protect Mia." I stopped the video. My vision blurred. They weren't just hoping for a miracle. They weren't praying I'd be kind. They planned this. Manipulated it. Weaponized the one thing they knew would gut me, my daughter, and used her as leverage to take our home. I closed the tablet slowly. My fingers were numb. Mia looked up at me, eyes wide. "I wasn't supposed to see it," she whispered. "I was coloring in the corner. Grandma didn't know I was there." "You did nothing wrong," I said quietly. "Nothing. I'm proud of you for telling me." She nodded, but I could see she didn't believe it yet. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table long after Mia had gone to bed, that tablet in front of me like it was a ticking bomb. I played the video again and again. Each time, it scraped deeper into my chest. My own mother, the woman who used to rock me to sleep after nightmares, was strategizing how to emotionally blackmail me. My father, who taught me how to change a tire, was talking about me like I was an obstacle. And Melissa, I always knew she was selfish, but I never realized she was vicious. The next morning, I sent the video to my lawyer. He called me 15 minutes later. "Jason," he said, his voice almost giddy. "You just won the case. I don't care if the judge is wearing a blindfold and earplugs. We're going to bury them." I wanted to be relieved, but I wasn't. Not yet, because the real weight of betrayal hadn't hit me until 2 days later. It started with a phone call from my mom. "You have some nerve," she snapped before I could even say hello. "Recording private conversations in our home. You're involving a child in this now? That's disgusting." "You forced her to delete it," I countered. "I didn't force her, she paused, realizing what she'd admitted. "You're poisoning her against us. You always turn everything into a war." My voice dropped. "You sued me, Mom. You're trying to take my house. You plan to destroy my life." "It's just a house," she snapped. "She needs it more. Melissa has never worked a day in her life. She's been struggling. You've always had it easier." That was when I understood. That was the script they had written long ago. It didn't matter that I worked 2 jobs in college, that I gave up travel, dating, nights out, all to make sure Mia never missed a meal. It didn't matter that I never asked them for anything while Melissa burned through every safety net like it was disposable. In their eyes, my stability meant I didn't need love, or support, or protection. That was for the one who never stood up. I hung up without another word. But they weren't done. Over the next week, the smear campaign began. It started subtle. Cousins stopped responding to texts. My aunt, who always sent me birthday cards, suddenly forgot. I started getting strange messages on Facebook. People asking if everything was okay, if I'd really cut off my parents over money. Then came the kicker. Melissa posted a long, dramatic message on Facebook. One of those vague but very targeted posts, dripping with crocodile tears. Some people will let greed turn them into strangers. I never thought my own brother would evict his little sister and a sick parent just to keep a house he doesn't even deserve. But I guess blood doesn't mean anything anymore. The comments poured in. Sympathy. Outrage. Strangers calling me a monster. Friends of the family asking how they could help. One woman even offered to start a GoFundMe. It was surreal. My inbox exploded. I responded once, just once, with a screenshot of the video and a short message. "Before you pick a side, maybe watch this." But they didn't care. People believe what they want to believe. And the narrative Melissa spun was easier to digest than the truth. Poor, dreamy little sister betrayed by cold, heartless brother who refuses to share. Even Mia's school principal called me in to check on the home environment, saying Mia had been quieter than usual. Of course, she had. She was 9, and her world was falling apart. The final straw came the Friday before the hearing. I picked Mia up from school and noticed her eyes were red. She wasn't crying, but she had been. "What happened?" I asked gently. She hesitated. "Grandma came to school." My stomach twisted. "What?" She said she had a surprise. "She brought me McDonald's and told my teacher it was a special lunch. But she asked me stuff about you. If you were angry all the time, if we had power in the house, if you yelled at her." I pulled over. My hands were shaking. "She told me not to tell," Mia whispered. "But I thought I should." I hugged her so tight she squeaked. That was it. That was the breaking point. This wasn't just about a house anymore. They were trying to build a case. They were trying to paint me as unstable, maybe even unfit. They wanted to make me look dangerous. They were coming after my kid. I called my lawyer that night and told him to dig deeper, get statements, subpoena records. I didn't care how much it cost. This wasn't about winning anymore. It was about defending what was mine. And what was mine wasn't just a piece of property. It was my daughter, my peace, my life. But I wasn't ready for what we found next. A day before the hearing, my lawyer called with something in his voice I hadn't heard before. Hesitation. "We pulled the family trust records," he said. "There is no family trust," I replied. "I never saw one." "Oh, there's a document," he said. "But it's not what you think." He sent me a PDF. I opened it. It was a scanned document, dated 7 years ago. It named my parents as trustees and me as the sole heir of the property in question. My house. Except here's the twist. It wasn't my house they were referring to. It was their house. The one they lived in, the one Melissa now occupied while they stayed with friends during the case. I sat in stunned silence as the pieces fell into place. They were broke. They had secretly put their house in my name years ago because they trusted me to be responsible. And now they were trying to take my house, The one I bought myself because they assumed I wouldn't fight back. They wanted to flip the script, cash out, and retire on my back. The betrayal was so deep it felt surgical. They had sold their future, then tried to steal mine. And the worst part? They thought they'd get away with it. They thought I'd just nod, take the hit, and move out quietly because that's what I always did. But not this time. This time, I had proof. This time, I had Mia. And when we walked into that courtroom the next day, I didn't just walk in as a man defending a house. I walked in as a father defending a child. A legacy. A line in the sand. They tried to smile when I entered. My mother even mouthed, "We love you." But I didn't smile back. Mia clutched my hand. Her tablet was tucked in her backpack. And when the judge asked if anyone had additional evidence to present, she stood up, pulled it out, and said, loud and clear, "Can I show you what Grandma made me delete?" The judge looked surprised but nodded. She hit play. And in that courtroom, silent, sterile, sacred, that tiny voice echoed through the speakers, capturing every word, every scheme, every ounce of calculated betrayal. I didn't look at my parents. I didn't need to. I could feel the blood drain from their faces. When the video ended, the room stayed quiet for a long time. Not courtroom quiet, soul quiet, the kind of silence that comes after something breaks. The judge didn't say anything right away, and neither did my lawyer. I heard the muffled shuffling of paper somewhere behind me, the nervous cough of a court clerk, a stifled gasp from someone in the second row, but I didn't turn around. I just kept my eyes on Mia. She was standing still, holding that tablet like a shield. Her lips pressed tight, her tiny shoulders square. She didn't look scared. She looked like someone who had finally stopped being afraid. The judge cleared his throat, and when he finally spoke, his voice was calm but firm. "We'll take a recess," he said. "I need time to process this new evidence." The bailiff escorted everyone out. My parents tried to speak to me, to Mia, but I blocked them out. Melissa reached out as we passed her, her voice shaking. "Jason, I didn't know she was recording." I didn't look at her, just walked past. We sat in a quiet hallway while Mia colored in her notebook, and I stared at my hands, my mind whirling with everything that had led us here. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. Courtrooms, betrayals, child witnesses. When I bought that house 4 years ago, I imagined birthday balloons tied to the fence, bedtime stories echoing off those walls, dance parties in the kitchen on rainy days. It was supposed to be the place we healed from the loss of Mia's mom, a place we started fresh. Instead, it had become a battleground. And even though we just won the battle, I could feel it. I didn't feel victorious. I felt wrecked. Absolutely gutted. By the time the judge returned and ruled the case dismissed with prejudice, meaning they couldn't refile, I was barely listening. My lawyer grinned, patted me on the back, whispered something about open and shut, and I nodded, but it felt hollow. Mia and I left the courthouse and drove home in silence. She fell asleep in the car, her head against the window. I pulled into our driveway, still ours, thank God, and just sat there watching the sun dip behind the trees. I should have been relieved. Instead, I just felt lost. That's the thing they don't tell you about surviving betrayal. The aftermath is quiet, empty. You spend all your strength fighting, protecting, surviving. And when the storm passes, there's no energy left to celebrate. There's just space and silence. And the question, what now? The weeks that followed were the hardest I'd ever lived through. Not because of my parents or Melissa. They were suddenly very quiet, probably at their lawyer's advice, but because of the emotional fallout. The grief hit me like a wave. Not just grief for the betrayal, but grief for the version of me who still believed my parents had my back. That version was gone now, and I had to mourn him. Mia was the only reason I kept moving. We settled back into routines. I started cooking again, actual meals, not just microwave stuff. I walked her to school, helped with homework, told bedtime stories I barely remembered halfway through. She never asked about court again. But sometimes at night, she'd crawl into my bed without saying anything and fall asleep curled up next to me, like she just needed to be close. One night, maybe a month after the ruling, I was brushing her hair, and she asked me something I wasn't ready for. "Do you still love Grandma?" I froze. My hands paused mid-stroke. I looked at her in the mirror, her eyes big and waiting. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I think I'll always love the version of her I thought she was." She nodded like she understood, and maybe she did. Kids are wise in ways adults forget how to be. That night, after she fell asleep, I poured myself a drink, pulled out my laptop, and started something new. A spreadsheet. Not glamorous, I know, but it was the start of something. I was done being reactive, done living in survival mode. It was time to rebuild on my terms. I started small. I mapped out my finances, mapped out the equity I had in the house now that it was legally ironclad. Looked at my savings, started researching programs, grants, part-time business loans, even courses. See, for years I'd done IT work as a stable 9-to-5 job. But I'd always dreamed of building something of my own, something digital, scalable, flexible enough that I could be there for Mia more, a side hustle turned full-time dream. But I never had the confidence. Or maybe I just never had the push. Now I had both. 2 months later, I launched my first web-based service, a subscription platform offering virtual IT support for small businesses that couldn't afford full-time tech help. It wasn't flashy, but it solved a real problem. And it started growing faster than I expected. By month 3, I had 10 regular clients. By month 5, I had 25. I hired a virtual assistant, then a junior tech contractor. The work came steady, and for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't treading water. I was swimming hard, fast, free. Mia noticed the difference too. I laughed more, slept better, took her to the park on weekday afternoons, taught her how to code simple animations on Scratch. She made one of a kitten throwing tacos and showed it off at school. Her teacher emailed me to say Mia seemed more confident, more expressive. I teared up reading that one. But that didn't mean everything was perfect. The family stuff lingered. My parents hadn't spoken to me since the ruling. Melissa had posted some vague Instagram story about letting go of toxic energies, followed by a photo of her holding a latte shaped like a mushroom. Whatever. Then one day, my mom showed up unannounced. It was a Saturday. Mia was at a friend's birthday party. I'd just come in from mowing the lawn and found her standing on the porch like she belonged there. "Jason," she said softly, "can we talk?" I didn't invite her in. We stood outside, sun beating down, cicadas buzzing in the trees. She looked smaller, older, tired in a way makeup couldn't cover. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she said. "I know that probably doesn't mean much now." I didn't answer. She continued, her voice cracking. "I thought I was helping Melissa. She's always been so lost, and I just thought if she had a home, maybe she'd settle down." "You tried to destroy my home to give her one," I said. She flinched. "I know." There was a long pause. "She's your daughter, too," she said eventually. "So is Mia," I said. "But that didn't stop you from manipulating her, interrogating her at school, making her feel unsafe." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't mean to. You didn't care what it would cost, Mom. That's what hurt the most." Another pause. "Your father's sick," she said suddenly. "Early-stage Parkinson's. We found out a month ago." I swallowed. Hard. "I thought you should know." I nodded, but said nothing. She looked at me like she wanted me to say something else. Maybe forgiveness. Maybe comfort. I didn't have either. Finally, she turned to go. But before she left, she looked back. "I hope one day we can fix this." I didn't answer because I didn't know yet if I wanted it fixed. But I did know this. I was no longer the person who would break himself in half to make everyone else comfortable. Not anymore. That night, I sat Mia down and told her gently about her grandpa's illness. She nodded, solemn. "Are we going to see him?" she asked. "Do you want to?" She was quiet for a moment, then shrugged. "Not yet." "Okay," I said. "That's okay." She leaned against me. "Can we go get tacos tomorrow?" I smiled. Absolutely. The next few weeks were quiet, peaceful, productive. I poured myself into the business, into fatherhood, into rebuilding myself, not just financially, but emotionally. I started therapy, virtual sessions at first, then in person when I felt ready. I unpacked the guilt I'd carried for years. The way I'd always been the strong one, the provider, the fixer. Turns out always being the responsible one isn't just exhausting, it's lonely. But I was learning to ask for help, to draw boundaries, to protect my peace. And one night, 6 months after the court case ended, as I sat on the porch watching Mia chase fireflies, I realized something. I hadn't just survived the fall. I'd risen from it. Wiser, stronger, clearer. But what I didn't know yet, what was still coming, was that Melissa wasn't done. She'd lost the house, lost the case, but she hadn't lost her ambition. And her next move was going to shake everything I'd just rebuilt. It started with a ping, just a casual notification on my business phone, an email from an unfamiliar address. Subject line: "You should know what she's doing." I almost ignored it. Honestly, I get weird spam all the time. People pitching shady crypto deals or offering to skyrocket my online presence for a monthly fee. But something about this one made me hesitate. It wasn't the subject line or the sender. It was the attachment, a single PDF cryptically named for _JSON, PDF. I clicked. It was a screenshot of an application. A grant request to a women's entrepreneurial fund. The business listed, Meltech Innovations. The founder, Melissa. I blinked. Her pitch was polished. Too polished. It used buzzwords like AI integration, virtual IT optimization, and subscription-based client scaling. It even included a projected earnings graph suspiciously similar to one I had used in a pitch deck 6 months ago, except hers was formatted in pastel colors and used a slightly fancier font. No way. I scanned faster. There it was. The services section was a direct copy of my own site, only reworded slightly to sound more feminine and intuitive. The worst part? She included client names. My clients. Claiming to have worked with them in a freelance capacity. I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't just a lazy copycat scheme. She was impersonating my work, my business, the one thing I had built from the ashes. She was riding the coattails of my success, slapping glitter on it and passing it off as her own revolutionary idea. I checked the bottom of the email again. No name, just, figured you deserve to know. Do what you will. A friend. That night, I barely slept. I paced the living room until 2 a.m., going through every stage of anger possible. First came disbelief. She wouldn't dare. Then the fury. How dare she? Then the confusion. Asterisk, why now? What's the angle? Asterisk, and then clarity. This wasn't random. Melissa didn't just want attention. She wanted redemption. After the court case, she became a social pariah in our town. Word spread, even without me posting anything. That courtroom video didn't stay secret for long. My lawyer leaked it accidentally when a journalist from the local paper started snooping. It didn't make front-page news, but in a town like ours, all it takes is one shared Facebook post to light a match. Melissa went from the dreamy, misunderstood sister to the manipulative fraud who tried to evict her own niece. Her Instagram followers dropped. A few of her wellness clients ghosted her. Suddenly, being the quirky victim of a cruel brother wasn't marketable anymore. So, what did she do? She pivoted. She took my business model, literally lifted from emails and screenshots she must have accessed during our brief reconciliation period years ago, and turned it into her comeback tour. But here's the thing she didn't realize. She picked the wrong battlefield. See, in the courtroom, things move slow. There's procedure, civility, a burden of proof. But in business, it's chess. And I don't lose at chess. The next morning I got to work. First, I verified everything. I downloaded her full pitch deck from the grant committee's public archive. I cross-referenced her past work section with my own client list. 7 out of 10 businesses she listed had never even heard of her. The other 3 were still working with me. Then I checked her LinkedIn. She'd listed herself as the founder and lead consultant at a company she claimed had been in operation since 2020. Cute. My lawyer, Eric, was the first person I called. She what? He barked when I told him. She cloned my business, I said. Name changed, branding tweaked, but the pitch, services, and structure? Mine. Word for word. Send me everything. We might be looking at IP infringement, possibly wire fraud if she received any payments using your credentials. Should I go public? Not yet, he said. Let's build this, right? So I did. For 2 weeks, I collected everything. Every screenshot, every line of code that matched, every client testimony. I even discovered she'd used AI to rewrite a few of my blog posts for her business blog. Same structure, same subheadings, just fluffed up with spiritual buzzwords. I created a folder titled The Melissa Files. Meanwhile, I reached out to the anonymous sender. Just 1 sentence. Thank you. Want to help more? They replied within hours. Turned out it was someone on the grant committee who had recognized the name from my business blog. They'd done a double take when they saw her pitch and, after digging a little deeper, realized the plagiarism was too bold to ignore. Her application is still pending, they wrote. But if you send us documentation, we can pull her before the final round. Quietly. No press. I smiled, but quietly wasn't my goal. Melissa had tried to bury me, smear me, use my daughter as leverage. I wasn't about to let her slink off with a slap on the wrist. So I kept digging, and that's when I found the golden ticket. Melissa had signed a consultancy agreement last year with a startup that had since gone under. On the surface, it looked harmless, except that the contract she uploaded as a client reference on her grant pitch included my old logo. The logo I used during my soft launch phase, the one I had since rebranded from, but had still registered under copyright. I sent it to Eric. He replied within minutes. She's cooked. We filed a cease and desist letter.
Public.
On record. Delivered by courier with a 30-day window to retract all claims and issue a public apology or face full legal action, including damages for impersonation, brand theft, and fraudulent misrepresentation. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I scheduled a call with 3 of the grant sponsors, corporate donors who were listed publicly. I pitched them a short story. What happens when people game your process using someone else's life's work? They were furious. Apparently, this wasn't the first time someone had tried to pull a fast one, but rarely was the evidence so airtight. Are you planning to go public? One of them asked. I paused.
Yes.
But not until she has enough rope. So, I waited. 30 days passed. Melissa didn't respond to the C&D, didn't take down the site, didn't correct her portfolio. In fact, she doubled down. Posted a video to TikTok about how big tech bros were trying to silence visionary women in STEM. It got 200 views. I waited one more week, then I struck. I sent the full dossier, screenshots, recordings, video proof, legal filings, to a tech-focused journalist who followed my work during the early launch of my platform. He loved a good underdog story. And when I told him what had happened in court 6 months ago, he nearly dropped the phone. Jason, he said, this is bigger than a business feud. This is family fraud. This is betrayal, intellectual theft, and emotional manipulation. I let him run with it. The article went live the following Monday. Headline, Sister Act, how one woman tried to steal her brother's startup and got caught by a 9-year-old. It blew up. Reddit, Hacker News, LinkedIn. Even a few parenting blogs picked it up. And suddenly, Melissa's carefully curated image wasn't just cracked, it was shattered. Sponsors pulled out. Her grant application was revoked. Her domain host suspended her website, pending legal review. PayPal froze her donation links. But I still wasn't done because sometimes justice isn't just about taking someone down. It's about rising above them publicly. A week after the article dropped, I launched a new program through my business, Project Phoenix, a mentorship initiative for single parents starting digital side hustles. Affordable, scalable, transparent. Guess what? The welcome video included a short clip of Mia holding up her tablet, smiling. Always back up the truth, she said. The program exploded. People signed up in droves, partly out of sympathy, partly because the content was actually useful. I hired 2 more team members just to handle onboarding. And suddenly the thing they tried to destroy had become something bigger, stronger, untouchable. But just when I thought it was over, just when I started to believe the worst was behind me, I got a letter in the mail, a handwritten envelope, no return address. Inside was a card. It said, "You think this is over, but it's just the beginning." Underneath the note was a photo of Mia at school, taken from across the street. I stared at the photo of Mia for a full minute before I let myself breathe. It was grainy, taken from a distance, but it was unmistakably her, my daughter, standing by the school gate with her pink backpack, laughing at something one of her friends said, completely unaware, completely exposed. My hands went cold. My ears started to ring. Every protective instinct in my body flared red hot. There was no return address, no signature, just that smug, scrolled message. "You think this is over, but it's just the beginning." I wasn't naive. I knew what this was. It wasn't a threat of violence. Melissa didn't have that in her, but it was a message. A final, desperate ploy to scare me back into silence. She knew she'd lost everything that mattered in the public eye. Now she was trying to make it personal again. Psychological warfare. She was telling me, "You may have won in the courtroom, online, and in business, but I can still rattle your peace. I can still get in your head." And for about an hour, it worked. I sat in the living room while Mia did her homework in the next room, fighting back the primal urge to scream, to punch a wall, to call the police, the school, every authority I could reach. But something stopped me. A thought, quiet but persistent. Asterisk, this is her endgame. She wants you to panic. Asterisk, so I didn't. Instead, I pulled out my phone, snapped a photo of the letter and envelope, and sent it to Eric, my lawyer, with the subject line "Last Nail." He called me 10 minutes later. "This is it," he said. "She's crossed into criminal territory now. Harassment, stalking, potential endangerment of a minor. We can loop in the DA." Do it, I said. And Jason, I've already talked to the judge from your last case. If this is her idea of revenge, she just handed you a sledgehammer. Over the next 48 hours, things moved fast. We filed a restraining order, not just against Melissa but my parents, too. After all, the court case had proven they were co-conspirators, and the photo made it clear that someone close to Mia's daily schedule had provided that timing. My guess, Melissa had been watching from a distance, using someone else's car park near the school. Creepy, yes. Illegal? Now it was. The restraining order was granted within the week, but I wasn't done yet. This time, I wasn't just going to defend myself. This time, I was going to end it. And I had the perfect plan. I knew Melissa had been trying to recover her image. A few days before the photo arrived, I'd seen a new profile pop up online. Different name, but same face, different hair color. She'd started a rebrand, a podcast, Healing After Betrayal. The bio said, helping women navigate narcissistic siblings and family estrangement with grace and resilience. It was almost funny. I could have let it go. Could have laughed at the delusion. But that photo, that crossed a line no parent would ever forgive. So, I reached out to a friend of mine, Nina, who ran a podcast review site and occasionally consulted for platforms. She had serious pull with hosting services. I sent her Melissa's new account, explained everything, and asked her to keep tabs on the uploads. 3 days later, Melissa uploaded her first episode, a dramatic monologue about how it feels when the people you love most turn into strangers. It was full of lies, naturally fabricated childhood abuse, sob stories about me isolating her from our parents, even a fake anecdote about Mia witnessing aggression. I was painted as a textbook narcissist, cold and controlling, while she was the innocent healer who just wanted peace. It was the perfect performance. So I let her keep going. I let her upload 3 more episodes. Each one more unhinged than the last. Each one more full of specific names, dates, details she shouldn't have used. And then, on episode 5, she slipped. She mentioned the grant she almost received and named the company she claimed she worked for. My company. That was the key. See, I hadn't yet pursued damages for intellectual property theft. I'd won the moral war. I destroyed her credibility, but I hadn't pursued financial punishment. Until now. With her podcast as evidence, I filed a civil suit, brand impersonation, defamation, fraudulent claims. And this time, we didn't file quietly. We filed loud. Eric coordinated with the same tech journalist who broke our last story. The headline this time, from plagiarism to podcast lies, how one woman tried to rebuild her image by destroying her brother's reputation and got sued again. The article dropped like a bomb. Melissa's tiny podcast was removed from every major platform within 72 hours. The hosting service issued a public apology for not vetting slanderous content. Her rebrand was dead before it began. But that wasn't the end, because the final blow came from an unexpected place, the IRS. Turns out when you fabricate income sources for grant applications and list clients you never had, that's fraud. And when you take donations on platforms like Ko-fi or PayPal using business names you don't own, that's taxable income, unreported income. I didn't even have to lift a finger. The journalist who covered her story passed it along to a friend in the tax department. Melissa was audited, and I heard through the grapevine, through a distant cousin who still occasionally texts me holiday greetings, that she owed nearly $17,000 in back taxes and fines. She'd have to liquidate her car, move out of her apartment, and shut down her bank account just to keep her head above water. My parents tried to help, of course, but there wasn't much they could do because I had filed the restraining order against them, too. And when they tried to contact me at school again, this time pretending to be emergency contacts, the school immediately notified me. That resulted in a court citation. They were fined for violating the restraining order. It hit them hard. Their names were flagged in county systems. The small retirement they were counting on, delayed indefinitely due to legal costs. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I felt calm. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. It was about drawing a clear line and saying no more. Months passed. Mia thrived. She started a coding club at her school. One day, she showed me a project where a little digital elephant guarded a castle from trolls. "This one's you," she said, pointing to the elephant. "You protect me." I cried that night. Not because I was sad, but because I was proud of her, of myself, of everything we had built. My business continued to grow. I started a nonprofit wing to mentor teens in tech. We hosted our first free seminar for single parents interested in side hustles. Over 200 people attended. Life was better than ever. Then one day, a letter arrived in the mail. Different from the others. This one was from Melissa. Handwritten. No threats, no insults, just 4 words. You finally beat me. I smiled and tossed it in the trash. Because I hadn't just beaten her. I had outgrown her. And that was the best revenge of all.